Where's my model? Okay. So if I click on my model now, I'll get just this. Our goal is to let the user specify the input parameters. This is to generalize the model. Okay. And then once we do that, we can share it, use it in other places. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to talk about that will help us to generalize this model. So you right click on it and you say edit, it'll take you back. The first thing is we want to be able to create what we call parameters. Parameters are the inputs and the outputs of our model. And so one thing we can do really quickly to make this more general is to right click on these two bubbles. And when we right click on these two bubbles to say set those as a model parameter. So I'm going to start off with the census tracts. I'm going to right click and say model parameter. I'm going to right click watersheds and say model parameter. Now, those two things will be user adjustable. Show you what I mean. If we hit save and we right click on, we double click on model, now we have those two things as inputs. I'm going to change the name of census tracts and watersheds to reflect the fact that we want them to be more general. They don't necessarily have to be census tracts, and we don't necessarily have to be watersheds. So I'll go back in here, and I can just change the name of census tracts. I can right click and say rename, and instead of calling it census tracts, I'm going to call it I'll call it smaller polygons. Okay, right click on the watersheds and call it larger polygons. So now I've got my smaller polygons and my larger polygons. And now when I double click on model, I get, maybe I didn't save yet. Save.
Of our model, and it's still showing up in our toolbox. And it says 200 parameters somewhere else.
Did you say, wait, that's what I did. I say, see where you saved it at.
Say edit.
You save it.
And then if you right click on this and make it a model parameter, right click, and then it's done.
Yeah, the action model. That's where I did.
All right, so we've got our two model parameters. Now, there's other things we'd like the user to specify, as I mentioned. The next thing, probably the next thing in terms of priority, would be the output, right? So we want the user to specify the inputs, and we want the user to be able to specify the output. So we can go down in our thing, and either any one of these, probably the one that we actually want to have them select is this one right here before we add the field. So this one becomes a parameter because here we're just adding things onto it. So this is the true output. So we could, I don't know whether or not we can right click on the very last one and say that's a model parameter. Let's see what happens if I do that. I'm gonna not do that. I'm gonna do it on the very first one where it first gets created, which is right here. Oh, calculate field. It's the dissolve. Oh no, it's the very last one. Never mind. But I forgot the very last step we do is dissolve. So right click on the output of the dissolve and say I want to make that a model parameter. Okay. And then hit save. And I'm gonna rename this one. I'm just gonna call it output features, or output polygons. Okay. All right, so now when we run the model, the user can specify all three of these. So whenever they run the model, they'll be able to select two polygon layers, one that's smaller than the other, and they're going to get, the result is they're going to get these boundaries, the larger polygon boundaries, with an estimate of probably population, but it's really any value. Okay. Now this takes us to the next thing that we probably want to generalize. Right now, if I change one of these, what would happen? What if I change census tracts and there wasn't a field called P1001001? Yeah, it wouldn't run. It would break partway through. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to have the user select the field that they wanted to choose to use? Now, where do we use that first? Calculate the field, the intersect. We don't use that until the very end, right? The intersect population estimate, or this calculate field right here. This is the first time we use that field. In fact, it's the only time we use that field, right? Yep. And so one thing that you can do is you can actually add your own. Let's create a new variable. Okay, we can create a new variable. I'm going to call it a field. I'm going to make it a field. Okay. Now I have this variable right here, and I make that a parameter. Now, if I press save, the user can choose that field. Okay? But there's a few issues. First of all, there's no drop down. I can change this. I can go under properties and maybe I can't. It'd be nice to be able to not have to type P0000101 out, right? I thought there was a way. There definitely is a way if it's a script to do this. Look here. Okay, so under, this is where it goes. You need to get the name of that field into there. Okay, well, I don't know for sure how to make it so that there's a list, but we'll generalize. I'll show you how to generalize it. Yeah.
If you create a variable from the expression, like you right click on the calculate field and get a variable.
Yeah, that's a good idea. However, it doesn't solve our problem. So we can do make variable from expression and put that right here. The only problem with doing that is that now they have to type in this whole thing instead of just this part. But that's definitely on the right track, and that's a good thing to point out to people, that you can right click and get that value from that location. Anyway, so what if we just want that field value? Right now that variable is called field. We want that to go in here. Well, there's a very specific way to do that. You instead of changing the exclamation point here, you can turn this into you can put percent signs around it. So percent, field, percent. And what that does is it tells it to use the values that are in percent, field, percent. Yeah, float right here. It'll work, but when at least when I ran it, it rounded off all the values to 1 or 0, and so the actual values weren't correct. All right. So what's the name of that field? The only problem with this method is that now we have to find out the name of that crazy field. It's P0010001. Okay, so now I'm going to try this model, but now I have to type in P001. Is that what it was? 0001. And if you look at it, so I actually ran it. If you look up, see it replaced that value P001001. It shoved that in there because of that syntax. So anytime in Model Builder, you can create a variable, and then you use that syntax, percent, the name of the variable percent, and it'll swap that value out into that location. That also implies you can't name variables percent anything. Not that you would, but you can't. One of the things that I can do is, sorry, I'll re-show those clicks because it was too fast. If you right-click on Model and you say Properties, or sorry, Model, Properties, you can change the order. I might want Field to go up under smaller polygons because it's associated with that one. And output polygons is actually an output, okay? So I might not want it there. So I can move this up and it would be specified, sorry, right under, so you got smaller polygons and you specify the field. Larger polygons, output polygons, and we're all set. What is this?
Hey, Dr. Raver.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did you create the field part? I don't know.
Okay. What does this do? Okay, that doesn't work. Okay. So this field one, I right-clicked and said, I right-clicked on the white. I right-clicked and said, create variable right there. And then I went to field. I went to field down here. Now I could actually pick string as well until I figure out how to let you choose the fields from a certain variable. And field name, population estimate. I mean, I guess I wonder if this would work. Okay, this would be like this is a silly way to do it. I'm going to see if this works. So this one, actually, if I put the input table as the output to the very first one, which is C-Tracks pre-area, right? Let me go. I don't even know if this is going to work. So under the add field, C-Tracks new field. C-Tracks, new field. Under field name, I could choose a field and yeah, and make that the field. And the expression, I wonder if I can just leave it blank or do I need an expression? I'm experimenting here, so don't follow me down this weird path yet. Okay, nah, that's not really gonna work. I was trying to see if there was a way to run calculate field without it actually doing anything, but there's not. I'm gonna delete this guy. Sure. Anyway, so for right now, under this calculate field, this one right here, we're going to use this syntax. It'd be great to be able to choose from a list of the fields to put right there, but we have to manually type it in to make it general. There's got to be a better way to do that. In script tools, like if you're writing a script, you go into the properties, and actually there's another attribute here that says obtain values from, and you can specify which layer you want to obtain values from. Okay, so this works. I ran through it and got a result. Maybe you just have to actually type. One thing that might help the user is to put that as a default value, P0010001. So now, if I save this, it's ready to run, at least. So that when they open it, it's got a value in that value, so they at least get an idea of what they need to put there. Why did it go back down to the bottom? Somehow that got moved back down to the bottom. Okay, there's one other thing. Well, there's two other things I'd like to talk about. One other thing I'd like to demonstrate. The next one that I'd like to demonstrate is it's kind of messy to have intermediate data that gets saved to a particular location. So right now, for example, we have two intermediate data sets that get created. One after this intersect, and we have a path. So if we were to move this onto another computer and this path did not exist, what would happen? It wouldn't work. Yeah, we'd run it and it would die right here. Okay? So there are a few ways to get out of this issue. One is if you know your data is going to not be a huge data set, okay, which in this case it's not going to be, you can use a special parameter called in_memory. You can write your data into memory, and it actually never writes it on disk. That's kind of cool, and it's faster. Okay, but if you're dealing with large raster data sets, which we're not in this class, you wouldn't want to do this, or large vector data sets. So you could change the beginning here to in_memory. Okay, just that's it. That's it. That's all you have to do, and that changes the path and puts it in memory. So you won't be able to see it anymore when you run it. So if somebody else runs your tool, they won't see the intermediate data anywhere. So I could say, okay, there. Now I could run the entire model again, make sure it still works. It does, because I did in_memory. I'd want to do that for both. We've got this one, and it creates another one. Doesn't it create another one? Or is it just that intersect? Add field. Intersect. No, that's it. That's the only one it creates, I think. Is the dissolve now, the user specifies where that's going to go. Oh, sorry, you have a question? So this one right here?
Yeah.
in memory slash CW intersect.
We all read that?
If you want. That's one way to make it general. Okay. So now, all computers have this in memory. All computers have it. So you don't have to worry about the path anymore.
Well, I'm gonna be opening it.
Right. You're going to be opening on a different computer. You want to run it. If you have the path there, it wouldn't run until you fix the path on that one. So like, let's say, and models can get quite complex. Let's say you have 7 or 8 intermediate processes. Having to go and fix every single one every time you move from one computer to another is a pain. So if you use it in memory, you never have to fix the intermediate variable. So that's one way to fix an intermediate process, is to use in memory.
I write that out now for each class. It's used to stop. It creates an output and adds a bit to the display.
Sure. That just popped up. For some reason. Yeah. Where's that? So
Error.
P001. That.
Probably not.
Try it again. Oh no, you have FD routers.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait.
We'll look at it in a second. Let's make sure, first of all, the mine's even still working. Yeah, mine's still working, so we'll find out what's wrong there in a second. So the other thing that you can do is, instead of in memory, the other option you have is to say % scratch workspace %. And what you're doing there is you're telling the user to put it, you're telling the computer, you don't care where it goes, but it has to go into this thing called the scratch workspace. % scratch workspace %, and then the name. Okay. All right, now, what's the scratch workspace? Well, if the scratch workspace isn't set, you will have an error. Let's see if mine works. Oh, did I even save it? Because that looks like it's putting it. Properties. Oops. Edit. It put it, yeah. I saved it. So the scratch workspace must be set. you can right-click on here and go, or sorry, right-click on the toolbox. Our toolbox, and under environments, you can change the Scratch workspace. So this is the default Scratch workspace right here. Okay. So by default, it will put it in that location. All right. That's what I wanted to talk about. All of these environments, every time you run a tool, you can change any of these environments so that you have different processing extent or different Scratch workspace or so on. I would definitely recommend using in-memory when you can, when you're not dealing with a huge data set. So that would be my first recommendation, because it creates a data set, but it's in memory, and as soon as the model is done running, it's gone. So it doesn't eat up your hard drive space or anything like that. All right, I'll go ahead and leave this model up. Let me do something real quick. Edit, and wish there was a way to stagger this a little bit better. But here, I'll take all of these guys all the way down to there and move that down, and then move all these guys down and make this big, step that. So you could stagger that a little bit, same model. If you want to, I'll just leave this open. If anybody wants me to open up an individual step on here, let me know. If you have any other questions, let me know. And so your goal is to do this. It does not have to be this complex. But you do have to have at least one intermediate step. Right now, technically, we only have one intermediate. We only have one intermediate step that creates new data. We also have all of these additional calculated fields. And although this looks complex, I've seen models where there were 50 to 100 steps. If you want to look at the slideshow, there's a few other examples that ESRI gives. So we talked about showing results, generalizing models, and model builder help. So, we've got all these links to model builder helps out there. Okay. Actually, that's not the one that I wanted to show. So there's another example here. This is using 10.3, which is a step above. But this would be an example of something that would be okay for this lab. And we've got 2 data sets. We're going to take a study area and we're going to clip another layer by a study area. So let's say you go back, you get some data, or you use some of the previous lab data. You clip it out and you add a field, you calculate a field. That would be sufficient for to meet the needs of this lab. Okay. But I want you to make these 2 things parameters if you do that. Those 2 things should be parameters. Here's another example. Well, that's the same example. This is just building that same example. So you can even follow that through. Here, this is a different example. Now, one thing that this shows is that you can, once you create a tool, you can actually use that in other model building. So this is the tool that they created, clip to study area and add field. You can have tools inside of tools in ArcGIS. So that's a powerful ability. Okay. All right. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, for next week, I'll be down on the coast. And what I plan to do is similar to what I do up here. Before class, I will be meeting with Heather, but after class, I'll be around to answer questions. I'll stay till however you want me to stay down there, even past 5 o'clock. So, if y'all have questions down there, if you feel like you're behind, I'll be able to stick around and answer a bunch of questions there. And next week we'll go through the test review first, then we'll do the lecture, the lab, and we'll dismiss after that. All right. All right. All right, that's all the presentation for today. Oh, let me stop the presentation. And then we'll be all set.